All right, here we go. Well, it's 6:31 on May 5th, Mountain Time, on May 5th, 2020. I don't have any idea what time it is for Rod, but it's way different than 6:31 p.m. And it may not be May 5th. Heck, I don't know. Another episode of OS Virtual Check-In, and we're glad to have everybody here today, including my co-host, Michelle Kempema, because I don't see Mr. Palomarez yet. There he is. There he is. Okay, he's back there. He's back there in the utility room running a load of laundry or something. Thank you, co-host, for being with us tonight. We're, of course, live streaming on Facebook, and this is our Zoom platform that we use every Tuesday and Thursday night for the show. Our show is, for those of you who are new, there are a few of you that are new, it's a way for us to support the train enthusiast community, particularly during this time, but we intend to do it on an ongoing basis through at least September. We have shows scheduled every Tuesday and Thursday evening through September, the same time, same channel. The format, the first 45 to 50 minutes are Q&A, and our interview with our guest, who I'll introduce in a moment, and then after that's Q&A. At any point during this, if you have a question, just take your cursor and go down to the middle of the bottom of the screen there. If you're on Facebook, you just type it in like a post. For those of you joining us on Zoom here, just move your cursor to the middle of the bottom of the screen, and you can see the chat bubble. Just click that, type in your question at any point during the show, and when we get to Q&A, Michelle will take them in turn. The ground rules. We're here to have fun because we all enjoy trains, enjoy railroads, and so this is a way to have fun and connect with each other as train enthusiasts. So be respectful, no trolling, no grandstanding, no inappropriate comments or questions, and most of all, no politics, because we're here to have fun. Shows are live streamed on Caboose Facebook page, and the recordings are posted on our YouTube page at Caboose. So we're open to suggestions for guests, for improvements, for anything. So shoot them to us. I'm going to complete, while I'm introducing our guest tonight, I'm going to complete muting our folks. We're all muted during this. We'd appreciate if you would retain yourselves on mute. And we will, there we go. We're all cool. And then, so I'll introduce tonight's guest. Tonight's guest is a rail fan, modeler, and noted rail photographer, Ken Karlewicz. Ken, welcome, and thank you for joining us on OS tonight.
Happy to be here.
So we're going to start with the same question we start with every week, and we get a different answer. I will say we get a different answer and the same answer every time, and that's what's so cool about this and about this this question. But tell us about your background, where you grew up, and tell us about where your passion for trains came from.
I grew up in Haverstraw, New York. I moved to Haverstraw from Brooklyn when I was 5. We moved into Haverstraw into a little semi-attached home that was literally 2-3 football fields from the West Shore, what is now the CSX River Sub, which back at the time it was Penn Central. And I grew up watching, freights climbing the hill out of Haverstraw, climbing towards the Congress Tunnel. And literally the playground where I played was, if I would have been the age I am now, I probably could have threw a rock up and got it up to the main line up there. But, trains would stop and us curious kids would run up there. And as the trains were slowing down, sometimes we'd go up and have a closer look. So right now, that sort of took me into my love of trains, I would say. I mean, I used to ride up to visit my Uncle Eddie up in Schenectady, New York when I was a kid, and my grandma would come up from the city, and we'd meet her at Croton Harmon, take the train up on the Hudson line, and Uncle Eddie would pick us up at the train station, and we'd spend a weekend in Schenectady, and I'm sure there was a lot of D&H activity in the interim, and I just always remember being in the car as a little kid, and I remember boom, 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 driving over a grade crossing, and I'd say, we just went over Charlie Checker's train tracks, and came to be later on in the years when my parents would take me up, that even if I was in the back of the country squire in that little section where you can lay down in little seats facing each other as a little kid, and if I was like falling asleep on the way back to Rockland County, ba-boom, ba-boom, Charlie Checker's train tracks. And that was what my family remembers me as, always being the kid who loved trains. So now I'm the guy who loves trains.
Right.
Yep.
And so you're still in the area in Rockland County?
Sure. I literally live about 11 miles from where I grew up. I grew up right near CP 33, and I live about a half a mile from CP 22 on the same line. So can you imagine? But the travels have taken me all over New England, into Pennsylvania and stuff like that, in pursuit of Northeastern railroading. And I chose a number of years ago. I went away from the hobby for about 27 years, went through a divorce, and I don't know, walked into a train store. Actually, it was a train store owned by the late Al Seaback, who owned the Old and Weary car shop down in Tappan. Walked in 2003. Now it's 17 years. And I ended up picking up an issue of Great Model Railroads, and there was an article in there about a guy named Wayne Sittner who modeled D&H. And I looked him up, and I looked up the current technology that was out there, and I found a YouTube video with DCC sound of an Alco RS3. I think it was a Tsunami that was in it at the time, and that was it. I was just like, I gotta come back to this hobby. So here I am, rail fanning and being a model railroader once again.
Nice.
Yep.
So which did you do first? It sounds like you probably did, when you were younger, I imagine you did modeling first, right? Did you have a train set when you were younger?
Yeah, well, understand, like, I'm looking at the prototype going by, back and forth. We used to walk up the tracks to West Haverstraw. There was the old New York Central Freight House was still there at the time. There was a lot of infrastructure still remaining, of course. It was, 45 years ago or 50 years ago almost. And but I always had trains since I was a little kid. I had that, that Tyco, I had that railroad that comes like that styrofoam Tyco thing that it goes up and over itself and has the styrofoam and all the lichen bushes that my dad bought and put it on there. Later, as I became a teenager, I had my own train club that was out in the shed. And we had a bunch of scrap wood that we built like a layout on. I remember having the 22-inch radius, the 18 and the 15. And we had a couple switches that, it took a couple times around, but you could get into the inside, And of course, all the steam engines would derail. We never understood why on the 15-inch radius. But yeah, we'd make plaster mountains and drip stuff all over. And my father would freak out because we'd drip plaster all over all his tools and whatnot. But yeah, so I was really, it wasn't until my son was born when I was 21. So I was a young dad, and that's when I started, trying to set up some trains again for him and for us, But anything more involved came much later on, and I really would say that the more serious model railroading that people would equate me with now came from my understanding of the landscape. I mean, I'll back up a little. When I left model railroading, like I said, now it's, wow. It was 27 years I was gone. I'm back about 10. So, but during the time I was gone, I was a documentary photographer for a while. I was a landscape photographer for a shorter while. I shot a lot of black and white stuff, and I did a lot of studies up in Maine. And I studied with a great National Geographic photographer who taught me a lot about texture, how to see and photograph. I think the name of the class was Photographing the Patterns in Nature. Interestingly enough, I thought that was like a waste of time, but it really has helped with the design of some of my photographs, even from a geometry standpoint, if I, understanding line and curvature but also the texture in the landscape and how to use that, and also understanding light. So what I do now is, I see so much more now, and I'm able to bring that to my model railroad, which if any of you guys have seen it, on my page on Facebook, the Delaware and Hudson Model Railroad page, it's all about texture and detail. And I'm used to tramping around in the briar and the brush and the scrub grass and field grass. So I know what it looks like, and I know, more importantly, what it looks like in the beautiful, low, early morning and early evening light. So that's what I try to replicate on my railroad, and that's what I try to focus on. I will take pictures in the middle of the day, but I prefer to be out early morning and early evening. That's when I try to shoot if I can.
Yeah, for light. And I guess there's also something to be said about those times of the day that are, I perhaps overuse the term when we're talking in these terms, but that is evocative of a feeling or an emotion, which makes it art, because that's what art is. And
Yeah.
I like the way you put it in terms of capturing a sense of place and time.
Yeah.
Like, it's a matter of seeing something and knowing that you have to capture it. I think which we see in your documentary of the same name on YouTube of capturing a sense of place. That you're driving by a barn and you have to stop and take a picture of that barn at that moment, because there's something about 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and again, that goes back to light. So maybe talk about that just a little bit.
Well, it's always like, I used to get these phone calls, some years ago, and I'd get a call from somebody. They leave a message on my answering machine on my business. They'd say, "Hey, Ken, it's me, Joe. I was driving across the Tappan Zee Bridge, and the fog was lifting off the river, and the sun was melting through it, and I just thought, like, this is a shot that Ken would take." So many times people, and it really felt good for them to equate that with me. So here's the thing that I would say, because I know there are modelers and there are photographers both listening, but is that, if you really want to see something in you've always heard people say, "Oh, he captured it in a special, light." Like, I've never seen it look like that. I've taken pictures of ordinary things and places that people drive by every day going to work, and they never really see it. But if you capture it in a really amazing light, all the drama of that brings the viewer in to really get them to feel. What I want you to do when I look at my pictures, any picture, whether it's an environmental portrait of an old man who's lived his life, struggling to hold on to the farm, or it's a 103-year-old, machinist who, spent his life living in the same place, the house where he was born,
Right.
Doesn't really matter, but capturing something in all of its absolute splendor, you need to capture it in a special light. No pun intended, but pun is just there naturally. But it's like, to capture something in a special light is to render it in a way that most people don't often get to see it and appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can show it to you in that way, chances are, the greatest compliment I can have is people are saying to me now, "Where is that?" When you say to me, "Where is that?" what that really means is you've captured that thing in such a way that I'm inspired now to want to go and see that.
Right.
Even if it's a place that they have been seeing for so long but never really looked at. And if I can get you to look at it and want to go there, then that's the ultimate compliment, really.
Yeah. To the point that they're driving across the Tappan Zee Bridge and they say, "This is a Ken Karlewicz moment."
You know, or
Then it
that's
becomes trademark.
that's a Ken building. You know, Ken would want to photograph that. You know, even if it's 2:00, he'd probably come back at 7:30 at night and just get it, and you can see all the paint peeling. But you know, I tried to get published in Vermont Life. I'll just finish with this. For a number of years, when I was away from railroading, and I struggled to get published in Vermont Life, and it really took a lot of effort, more effort than if I had known what sense of place was. I would have got in like no problem. But I was just taking pictures of places, but I wasn't capturing a sense of place.
That's interesting.
Capturing a sense of place is for you to know by looking at my image, what does it feel like to be outside of Sheldon's General Store at 5:30 p.m. in October, or 5:15 because the sun's going to be gone by 10 to 6. That is capturing a sense of place. So it's not just shooting a picture of the place, but it's capturing it to show you that location in a completely different level, like that.
And it's not just light, right? Because you also have, early on, you experimented with angle, for example, by getting into some interesting places to take your shots. You might explain what that means.
You pay attention. I like talking to you.
I do pay attention. I actually took notes because, you know, I'm getting old and I have to remember things. So, you know, I have to make lists, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, tell us a little bit about that, because I like that.
Okay, I taught kids for 15 years, and I can tell you that I had a very successful children's program. And I remember once somebody asking me to create a syllabus, and I'm like, look, this is fly by the seat of your you-know-what class. There's no syllabus. There's no structure. We show up, whatever I feel at the moment. If I get the kids and I take them out in the street, I'm going to be like, whoa, look at this. You know, and I would teach them about the difference in the relationship between the subject and the light. For example, for you guys that are watching at home, okay? Okay, so you see the light? See it on my face? It's going to get flat as I turn toward the light, and it's going to get more dramatic as you get light and shadow. Simple as that, okay? So there's your example. But what I would emphasize with the kids is this, okay? When you go out there, you want to photograph. First of all, you want to respect the subject, whether it's a building or the railroad. You don't want to trample on things, you know what I'm saying? You want to just leave your little barely visible footprints, but lighting, angle, emotion, composition. So the angle which you look at it, the lines, the way they come into the corners of the frame, juxtaposition, tension, like pulling one thing against another, like putting it off to the side, like this way, that way, up, down. I use the drone a lot. I just put up a portrait of myself that I took last weekend on the river line, and I landed the drone, and I looked at the monitor and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. If I just step forward a little bit and tilt the lens up with the thumb knob, the sky was all beautiful and radiant behind me, but the drone is as effective from above as it is from below. So I often like to put the drone now down where my 62-year-old, you know, body doesn't want to like crawl on my stomach like I used to with the wide angle lens. I just sink that drone down off the bridge, drop it down, look up at the train, or put it up where I think would be a great vantage point for the angle that I would shoot if I were still desiring to climb trees. And after my hip surgery last year, right now, I don't need to climb. I can just fly the drone and put it where I want to, you know, take my pole saw out if there's too many branches and just hack a couple of them off, and then put the drone right in that pocket. And I've got a place where I don't have to worry about the wind blowing the drone into the branches, which it will do. Seems
a lot safer than climbing that tree with a bow saw over your shoulder, right?
But I do really, You know, any of my friends will tell you that, Kevin, that my personality is such that I'm the guy that would, if there was a group of guys around out trackside and they said, does anybody have a bow saw or a hatchet in their truck? I'd be like, yes. Pole saw, yeah.
In my camera bag.
It's just sticking out of the back of the damn pickup. It's like, sure, I'll cut that off for you.
Yeah, right.
You know, because I love, my wife always, she always comments about me because she's like, you must have been this kid who just always was in stuff. And it's like, yeah, I was. I love the thrill and excitement of adventure. I'm a very adventurous spirit. I love the outdoors. Even now, I mean, I'll be honest, some people may look at me and go, you know, what is this guy doing? There's a pandemic going on, and, you know, why is he out there? Look, if I'm out trackside and I'm keeping my distance and someone comes, hey, whoa, you know, hey, you can stay over there and talk to me. I'm not antisocial. I'm just anti, you know, I don't want to, I'm being respectful. Right. But most of the stuff, almost about 95% of what I do right now out there is solitary. I literally hike down the tracks back into places where nobody's going. And I'm what I'm excited about, Kevin, is that I'm probably doing something that I did in my 20s, which is I'm sort of pioneering new photo locations. That excites me. Yeah. I don't want to go and stand in a place where, oh yeah, you got to go down and stand by the so-and-so and I don't want to take that shot. Probably I've already taken it, but if everybody else is taking it, I don't want to take it. I want to go someplace and I want my own individuality and my own creative vision to come up with something new and interesting. And that's what I tried to do with the model railroad. Is I want to do something different, and I was willing to spend an exorbitant amount of time painstakingly doing my scenery like bush and texture by bush. Yep. You know, I would take a shoe. I was up to visit my buddy Mike Confalone, and our wives are real good friends, and we went to this little boutique store, and they had an antique shoe shine brush. And it had all these different colors of bristles in it. I looked at it. It was $15. I'm like, I bought 2 of them. And I took the little manicure scissors and I grabbed a little clump of those little hairs or whatever they are, horsehair.
Yeah, horsehair's right.
Snip them off. I take the barbecue skewer. You know, there you go. Just take it, right? Put it in the hole. Put a little hole. Put a little super tacky. Twist it, boom, there it is. I mean, when we go inside, I'll show you one, but it's like right. Those individual accents are what separate a landscape from like a uniform carpet of let's say, lichen or static grass or whatever the contemporary ground foam material is.
Right,
you know.
Right. Well, that brings up a topic that we've talked about before on our show with other guests, and that is 2 of them really. One is the camera as our eye, and the convergence between rail photography and modeling and how they can inform each other. But also, another thing that is unique about your photography that we talked about in our planning call was the fact that your shots are not generally as tight as most shots where you just have the railroad equipment. You know,
well, it's funny because there's one on the screen. It's so funny.
Show us.
You're saying
talk about it.
All right, let's check it out. This is a shot that, I mean, I've been photographing the Vermont Railway for 35 years. Let me shut the lights off. Is that okay? Just so you can see the screen without the glare, because if I put the camera towards it, the glare is going to probably want to kill it a little bit. Let's see. How's this angle?
That looks good.
Okay. So, you know, I shot this with the drone. You know, a lot of times, I mean, I've got the Nikon in the truck too with the 200. I could have just framed this, you know, with the mountains through the tombstones, whatever. But when I put the drone up, excuse me, I was able to create a geometry in here and, you know, like, so that I think what I'm into now is showing the railroad in the context of the landscape that it traverses, but from a broader, an overall perspective, if you will, right?
Yes.
So, and I love this step down thing, taking it into the corner. But then there's the morning B&R job, going down. Actually, this was a detour. This is a Pan Am detour train. And the detours were another exciting element this year because the Hoosick Tunnel collapsed. So you had these Pan Am trains going back and forth up the Vermont branch, up to Rutland and across over to Bellows Falls and, down to Deerfield along the Conn River. But it brought a whole new plethora of trains to a line that for many years would just see, a daily, a small daily local going up and down the line. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You want me to click to something different? Is that cool?
Sure.
Right, let me just go back and let me see here. Okay, let's start.
You also get modeling inspiration from some of these shots, right?
Yeah, I mean, so you can realize the importance of like a body of water under a trestle. I've come to really appreciate even the textures and the importance of even leafless trees. I mean, look at this beautiful big, I don't know what this is, an oak, or I don't know what this is. I'm not a tree expert, but, again, this is a difficult bridge to photograph, especially on a cloudy day, because chances are if you're down low, you're going to be looking up at that bright, backlighting situation there with the sky. Here's another one, just a simple pond, part of a marsh. It's getting close to the end of the day. The sun's pretty much down behind me, so it's just ambient light falling on the scene. But putting the drone up and getting all this reflectance off the sky, just give it another dimension between the blue and the red and the white of the snow. Again, look at how important these trees are in the landscape. So if you're modeling, excuse me, even if you're modeling like Mike Confalone, Mike does, the fifth season, trees and their physical forms play an important role in, the balance of your scene. This is actually an HO kit, Crosby and Sons coal. Nice. But there again, thank you, Kevin. There again, like, look, I mean, there's no light. This thing was in the shadow. Thank God for Photoshop. You're able to open up the shadows a little bit. But, again, geometry, the line coming out of the corner of the frame. This is like a V shape, a big V here. So it brings you right into this, which is the predominant, part of the frame. But, again, it's a drone shot taken is not 60 or 100 feet up. I'm not trying to show you the planet or the Google Earth view. I just want to get up. I want to see the guys through the windshield of the crew, through the windshield of the train, keeping it out of the way. Here's another one. I mean, there were 4 drones here taking this picture. I know one I looked around me, and at any given moment, any other drone was twice as high as I was. And, I could have been a little higher on this, but I also was being mindful that don't want to collide with anybody. But this is a scene, this is a place that I photographed many years ago. And I flew this drone from all the way up this river, down the river and up. And then I'm pivoting the camera to find out where the branches are, because I'm like way over here. And it turned out, though, I like the, again, the geometry of the shot, the angle. But again, it's all about the environment. It's a balance between the rail line, the village, the mountains, the hills, and all of these things, people don't realize, like when you build a model railroad, and I'll just talk and roll through the pictures. Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
But, like the juxtaposition of like the crossbuck to the church, to the general store, to the depot, like everything has a rhyme and reason. And when it's balanced, it allows even, amateur, guys that are not that great with their photography. And then if you put a light off to the side, shining on it. I recently photographed Stephen Lamora's gorgeous Bonnet Johnson and Gloversville Railroad. And by the way, this is a Greenwich. This is on the Batten Kill, which is my love and passion, that railroad. Just playing around with the drone. The sun had gone down. I'm up in Greenwich, just photographing this beautiful old Agway mill. But look at the gorgeous texture. And so paying attention to the texture and the design and the light on these things allows you to have a better understanding of perhaps of what you want to photograph in the landscape. This is the Batten Kill. Oops, wasn't supposed to show that because it's my secret spot, but anyway, VTR again, this is East Wallingford. And again, you know, there's like 15 guys out here all clustered over here shooting this shot. And I just like to, I mean, I've actually blown, you know, a bunch of shots. One day I'm going to just publish a thing of just a bunch of bloopers where like the drone, I call it like a drone fart, where the drone just spazzes out at the last minute. And I push the button like when the engine is here, and it takes the picture when like half the nose is chopped off of the engine. And I'm okay. One of these days I'm going to write a funny thing about it and make a story about that. But I think that this, my wife says that I've become a different photographer now because the drone only lets you get one shot. So if you, it's either good or you blew it. This is at Okemo in the background. I really had an exhilarating time photographing the detour trains because it took me back to when I was my younger days. And after experiencing, I'm going to throw this in because I know we'll run out of time.
Where's this one?
What's that?
Where's this one?
This one is in Ludlow, Vermont.
Yes.
And, you know, he's just come down the mountain grade from Rutland. He's coming into Ludlow. But it was a 23 mile an hour wind, I think. It was pretty windy that day. But, you know, this is when they ran the auto racks through. I believe this is in Fairhaven. Was my buddy Sam Botts when I shot this. Again, I'm trying to give you context. So I could shoot the picture this way with just a train going by the station, right? But putting this all in here shows how you used to come from town and come into, can you see my finger here?
Yep.
All right, come into the station and, you know, it just gives more of a history of, you know, where this is in relation to the town or the village, as it were. This is Wallingford. You saw a shot earlier. And this is another, an eastbound train coming the opposite way. This is the auto rack train. You know, Manchester, again, I'm always trying to do, you know, shake up the box a little and do something that is going to feel different. You know, it's not like, hey, it's no big shakes. You know, a drone is a drone. It's a gadget. I have a lot of fun with it. And it allows me to be limitless in terms of the way that I want to look at things and the way I want to see things, right?
Well, and what I find interesting about these photos is that you capture just such a volume of information about the setting, about the details, like the Agway Mill, you know, in Greenwich, or like the grade crossing at what was that last station, you know? And just the way that water flows and the formation of islands and the like under piers on bridges, and it really seems to inform modeling, and particularly details of modeling, but also making the model look set in the scene rather than set on the scene, if that makes sense.
Yes. Like you could have took a shot from up on the hill and with a telephoto, which I did many years ago, but I was up much higher. But in this case, it was a Sunday morning, and I loved the fact, I mean, I didn't plan the traffic flow. It just was what it was. But the one car, this is like, you know, a pandemic weekend in Vermont. before they shut off, the border where they're going to quarantine you now if you go over the border for 2 weeks. But the lighting was perfect. It was an early morning departure out of Hoosick Junction. But the one car in the empty road at 10:30, 10:40 on a Sunday morning, really, I also, because of my documentary background, I studied documentary photography at the International Center of Photography in Manhattan for a couple of years, and studied with some really great teachers. And so my documentary sensibility comes into play when I'm shooting. Sometimes there's nothing to think about in a documentary context, but sometimes, like that empty road, there is. Here again, this is a fairly busy traveled back road in Sunderland, Vermont. Now there are 10, 12 guys down below me. My friend Cully Cullinan told me, Ken, if you get that drone in my shot, I am throwing you in the swamp. Because at this point, it was a very cold morning. This was a thin, like a creme brulee texture of ice. And I was actually putting the drone down here to see what it looked like, more like looking up at it. And as soon as he said that, I said, Cully, because he's shooting slides, he can't Photoshop out the drone. So I opted for the upper, perspective. But again, this empty road, if I write a caption, which I will for this photo would speak to, we are so many weeks before the governor of Vermont will blah, 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 during the pandemic of 2020.
Right.
This is another one. This is
Wow.
going into Manchester. I'm telling you, nobody's ever made a picture here of this barn,
Right.
of anywhere between Sunderland and Manchester. There are basically no shots. I saw this barn. I hit the brakes, backed up, stopped the truck, put the drone up, and I saw the texture of this slate roof and the rusted top of the silo and the last bit of snow on the mountain. And I said, let's see if there's something. I like to use trees where there are trees for me to frame a shot, to give it more depth, to make it appear like, well, where is he? Maybe he's up in another tree that's beside the barn, right?
Right.
I don't want to shoot my shots so that they look like, oh yeah, he's up in a helicopter or he's up in the drone looking down on the thing.
Right.
I'm looking more across, but it gives this the context of this train is traveling through the valley, Manchester, this Mount Equinox up here, and this is part of the rural Vermont landscape. It's what it is. So I think there's only a couple shots left in this series, but this is some of my favorite things from Vermont, and some shots where I had to really fly the drone like really far. I don't like to fly my drone where I can't see where it is, because there's a lot of these little hairline branches that stick out. Yeah. And even though it looks like you're clear, I have gotten tangled up, and I have crashed. So, luckily I have found
the bow saw out again.
Yeah, I got to get the little rope that you hang the little hook on the branch.
Yep.
And you pull the rope, lops it off.
The pole pruner. Yep.
How are we doing on time, Kevin?
We're doing good. So let's do this. So we've kind of introduced the fact that with the camera as eye, and the sense of place, and panning back a little bit, getting a little bit more of the scene, which you've given us excellent examples of that, which inform the modeling. So what I'm going to do, Ken, is we're going to talk a bit while you're moving into the other room. I'll share my screen. I have an image of the layout itself, the track plan, that I'll put on the screen. If you want to go into the other room where the layout is, and then I'll share my screen.
Now, I just to give context, I'm going to stand up, and what I'm going to do is spin this around. I just want to show you. So where I'm working, where I sit and work, is basically at the stub end of my, can you see this?
Yes.
So There's a little diesel facility. There's no light on it because I've taken the light away from it. And this is an unfinished area of the
That's
layout.
at the end of staging. Yeah.
This is the stub end of staging. And then as I pivot, this is the staging yard.
Yep.
Which also acts as, when we do operating sessions, there's two guys in here working this. There's a hostler. He takes the power off the trains. And, if there's adjustments, he sends them to the service track. This is unresolved in here in the corner, which people will see in the layout plan. And just so you know, this is where the layout comes across from one room into the other. This is what's left of my little workbench clutter area here. But this will be an area that you'll see that runs above the staircase. And I must tell you that this railroad, actually, the fact that it's here, was inspired by this little diorama that you're seeing right here, which I built for my wife because we went on our honeymoon to Napa Valley, and I bought this HO scale, Napa Valley wine car. And for our 1-year anniversary, I took a piece of 2-inch foam and built this little diorama and put it in here. And once I built this was like the first modeling attempt in 20 some odd years. I said, imagine if I could build a railroad that would look like this. So now what you're going to see is going to be the result of that, the impetus that was come from that diorama. You walk from the stairs where it crosses from the staging area. Here's where the line swings and goes through the wall, which you'll see in the track plan once you post it. Yep. Now, main lines come out. So this is your track coming out. This is your inbound main. Mm-hmm. And you come out here into Frog Hollow. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so there's my entire layout. The main swings around. Cherry Valley branch starts as soon as you walk into the room. You're in the Cherry Valley branch, okay? Right here. And this, to me...
We're looking at the end of the Cherry Valley branch.
Yep. There was a washout right here due to the storm. Severed the line down to the paper mill, which was sort of like the beginning of the end for the line. The line is still struggling. It's the freight house is now we ship out bagged product from the feed mill, which is Cherry Valley Feeds, right there. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now up on the Batten Kill, the town of Greenwich. The freight yard actually comes out behind the houses. So the tracks run basically, behind their houses, and their backyard faces the tracks. So that was the inspiration for this little area, which I call Mill Hollow.
Nice.
All right. Camera angle okay, Kevin?
Yeah, looks good. Looks good.
Okay. So, the team track still gets used. They are currently running the old G&J 4116, which is, again, my favorite locomotive, which still runs up on the Batten Kill. And it's in its reincarnated Greenwich and Johnsonville paint. So if you could notice the texture, the amount of variegation and texture and flowering weeds and things on the railroad, this is like, you're talking about from here to here, several hours worth of work. So when you magnify that by all of what's going on here, in the video Sense of Place, the feed mill was red. I just painted over it and ended up with a shade of purple, which is kind of my favorite color. But again, all the detail and stuff that I put into the scene. Look, if I'm not going to have a real big railroad, I want to have one that feels to me, like something real, Yes. So this is the branch. So there's a local job, which you're looking at right now. CV1 runs up to the interchange. with the D&H. This was a D&H line that was just deemed as not so profitable anymore. Local investors came in, took it over, and it's now similar to the Batten Kill. The stream has yet to be poured, okay? But it's getting close. And I have been, honestly, on a hiatus from the railroad because had the hip surgery last year, got an infection, ended up on antibiotics, and with another surgery that's followed. And I was basically on crutches for almost 10 months last year. So I was rail fanning on crutches. That's a story that will be forthcoming maybe in Rail Fan magazine if I talk to my buddy Otto there. But
right.
Anyway, so this is the branch coming down into Cherry Valley, okay? Comes up grade here. That's Richmondville there on the D&H, okay? There is no branch. And again, this is about sense of place. This is not prototype modeling at its finest, and it's not intended to be. So Trout Brook Farm is a real place. Is that an exact replica? No, but to me, it's symbolic of what's there by Richmondville Hill.
Right.
That's an area of scenery. This whole area in here is not finished yet. There'll be a little trailer, mobile home in here where the cousin of the farmer lives, and there'll be a different pickup truck parked out in front of there every night. It's a little dysfunction going on there, but it's a dysfunctional cousin of the farmer, but she lives on the other side of the road. They've kind of like let her have a little land over there to herself, but she lives at the bottom of the embankment, so a little hard luck story, but she chooses life that way. So
right.
There's Cobleskill Coal. Now, this is probably the area of the railroad that most closely resembles the prototype. And again, if you notice the lighting in here, okay, the photos that you see on the wall play a very important part in creating the feeling. I wanted the feeling in here of you come upstairs and the mountains are all around you. So you're in upstate New York, and the hills wrap around the room, and the lighting resembles that which you'd find in early evening or early morning. And some people would say, well, lighting changes. Okay, well, over here, I've deliberately dropped off the lighting because to me, there is an insufficient amount of detail here. So until this area is more detailed, I will keep the lighting a little bit like, okay, there's a cloud. There's a cloud passing over, right?
Yep.
Then over here is the House Cave Cement. Does not resemble House Cave Cement, but the silos do. And I got some rubber rocks right now forming the backdrop, but eventually I have photographed the quarry from inside the quarry. There'll be photos up there that will allow more clearance back there because there's a siding back in there where there's two tracks. I don't know if this shows it. But again, these buildings are like placeholders in the sense that they've never been completely finished and detailed. Here's a scratch building thing that I was working on. But there's other things that were, to me, more pressing and more important. Okay?
Yep.
Okay, there you go. It's better. But again, this is the interchange. So this is patterned after Eagle Bridge, New York, on the Batten Kill.
Mm-hmm.
So the short line comes down. The D&H local drops off cars for these guys. Usually it's 3 or 4 cars because that's about all the interchange can handle. And then you move around. This is all the main. This is where, just like in Eagle Bridge, nowadays, it used to be the B&M main, but the Pan Am main now runs through Eagle Bridge. Pan Am freights will drop off the cars for the Batten Kill. They'll come down a couple times a week, pick up, leave their empties, and go back up the line. Again, photo backdrops that are kit bashed, if you will, like this thing back in here. I don't know if you can even see it, but there's these are literally for people that go, wow, I can't afford expensive backdrops, but 55-cent copies from Kinko's, okay? All of this stuff is all printed at Kinko's. I take the pictures. I take a series of maybe 5 shots at a time, splice them all. You know, I cut them. I cut the borders off, splice them together. And then, you know, blue tape them on the wall.
Are you saying, yeah, I was going to say, you're saying you physically layer these photos, right?
Well, this thing right here where you see, I don't know, can you see the river in the back there?
Yes, yes.
All right. Now you see that barn, right?
Yes, right.
Okay. I butted those 2 pictures together and it was like, you know, I mean, if it was really a contrast between the color of the trees on the right picture with the stream and the other picture, I would have stuck a tree in front of that seam.
Right.
But I wanted the feeling of like the river that runs around behind the back of the town, so to speak, right?
Yes.
So, you know, when I photograph this, it's like, or even when I look at it, it's like, oh yeah, there's a river that snakes through the back of the town. That's cool, you know? This is the town on my road that I call Central Bridge, and the old freight house. Both this structure was built by my friend Vic, who died at 100, Vic Delbora. This is built by my friend Walter Hessian. It was canary yellow, and I painted it up and weathered it, but his wife Lynn gave it to me for the railroad, and it's nice to have the spirit of good energy around your railroad. So,
sure.
You know what I mean? This mill here is built by Rich Cobb, and it's matches a prototype down in Thompson, Pennsylvania. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I measured this thing extensively, but you notice the lighting now. Watch the lighting here, modeler guys. Okay. So here's the lighting with the sun like almost over your shoulder. And if you turn this way, just like you would when you're taking the photograph, and you look at it this way, can you see how the light and shadow ratio changes?
Yep.
Okay. So when you walk in the room, I've got the lighting set up so that looks more dramatic this way than it does this way, because the highlights tend to blow out a little bit.
A little more flat. Yes.
With this way. And because, and I'll show you my lighting too, is I've got, you want to see it?
Yeah.
I got clamp lights up behind the valance. Okay. And then in the aisle, I've got all these heads. And so if I'm doing a shoot, if I want to shoot something or I want to do a video, I can spin them around. I can literally steal the light from one spot and send it over to another.
So it looked like you had both tubes and the spots up there, right?
I got tubes and spots on clamps behind the valance, and I've got just spots in the aisle. And the reason I've got lights in the aisle is because I feel that a lot of times if you don't have lights in the aisle shining, the freight cars that are closest to the aisle, you won't be able to see the weathering. You will not be able to see all the beautiful detail on the outside of the car. So, if you got just the tubes shining down directly from above, the front of the train is going to go dark, okay?
Right.
All right? So,
yeah, have to have some coming in at an angle.
Here they go up the branch.
So I don't know if I asked you this. So did you take? I might have asked you this, but that's 5 minutes ago. Did you take photos for the backdrops with the drone?
No, and that's my next thing that I'm going to start getting into, because I told my wife, I said, look, I'm going to make some money with this drone, and I have a feeling, she said to me, she goes, you could do the backdrop photos like, people want a certain, area that you photograph in, she said, you could do the backdrops. And what's cool about the drone is, so like to take this scene that you're looking at right here, there's about 10 photographs. Okay. So you see there's the farm back there in the center. You see it?
Yep. Yep.
All right. So what I did was actually to take that, I slept in my truck at this spot so that I'd be there in the morning when the light came up. And I basically I found the center point and I went, so there's one. I said 2, 3, and then from the center, 4, 5.
Nice.
So what you got to do is you got to overlap. You got to use the tripod. You got to use a level. And you got to take a series of at least 5 shots. And each picture has to have something distinguishable, like a tree, a rock, or whatever, that you can overlap. So you can stitch them together. Yeah. So you can line them up together. Now, these pictures are not stitched. These pictures are photocopies, Kinko's 55-cent copies. This thing literally cost me $5.50 to go from there all the way to this coal dealer here, abandoned coal dealer. Okay.
So are they large format prints?
They're just 8 by 10.
Wow.
They're not scaled up.
Wow.
Or anything. And any place, as you can see here, I'll make this steady. So here's a seam right here.
Right.
There's a seam right here. So any place there's a seam, I usually try to put a tree to conceal the seam. But let me tell you something. This, we came home last night. It was pretty warm. Here's a seam right back in here. There's a tree. But, unless you let it get really muggy up here, these pictures have not curled. They have not budged. And, we have central air in the house, and we don't let it get real muggy because of the backdrops and my stuff. But
and are they just on clean paper?
They're just printed on the junkiest. I tell the guy, print them on the junkiest paper that you got because I don't want to shine on them. I don't want any gloss on them.
Right.
I just want a flat, dull image because nature is not glossy and shiny. Right. I also don't want to see, I'm going to put this down so I can stand here and talk to you. I also don't want to see when the train goes by, right? When it's going by the backdrop or coming around the bend, I don't want the headlight of the engine reflecting off the backdrop. So absolutely flat paper, right?
Yes.
Now the drone is really sweet because a lot of times when I'm shooting the drone, I'm doing the shot that I'm doing, but then if I look this way, oh, wow, look at that. Or, oh, look at that, how the light changes. But if you wanted to set up to do a farm scene with the drone and you put it, you have to also, I guess it's like having an eye. Confalone says, he told me when I shot the first backdrop pictures that he goes, you have a natural way of looking at this from a certain angle that the angle works. Right. So, I mean, if you take it too high, unless you have a scene where you're going to look down into the valley, right, the picture's going to look distorted. So you have to look out and across, and it has to be at a scale that you have to be able to imagine how is that going to flow behind your feed mill, right? Yes. Right. Okay. So before I enlarged these or shrunk them, these are actually taped up on the wall almost as, well, let me test this out to see how it looks. And then you start putting, the buildings and stuff in front of it and some trees. And it's like, all of a sudden you're like, how far do I go before I might have to pull these off and get this stitched? I would send them up to Mike and I'm sure he'd be happy to stitch them. But, it's not necessary. Their things are on there. And for 55 cents a piece, I spent a total of $5.50 to go a distance of about 10 feet. Right, right. So pretty pretty cool. So absolutely. Oh, what else you got for me? Let me take this out of here. Any more questions?
So yeah, I think we do have questions.
Good.
I like that. I like that. I like the $5.50 10-foot back.
Yep.
That's
Yeah,
pretty
you don't
cool.
need to spend a lot of money on this stuff.
Now, I will tell our viewers tonight that we have the article in Model Railroad Planning has a lot of the detail about the bench work and the scenery and the track work and things like that. All the track work's commercial, isn't it?
Oh yeah, there's
Yeah.
no hand
No hand laid
laid
track,
track
right?
in here, but there is a ton of hand painted track.
Yes, right. That's
So
obvious.
everything is all the ties are all hand painted with oils and stuff like that. And some guys that are actually like really into the track have asked me if it's hand laid. And something else I also do, which I think your viewers would probably love to know about, is when the track was put down, and my friend Don and I did all the track work, my buddy Don, but when the track was glued down, before the glue was really set, can you see the track right now?
Yep.
So what I did was I literally took this barbecue skewer and I went, and then I went, and I kept going all the way around and made everything look jacked up and crooked. You know what's funny? I mean, I've been up shooting the Batten kill a lot, and I tell my wife, like, I'm getting a lot of exercise now photographing up there, because I literally very often will sort of like hike into a spot, but I actually do like a power speed walk, jumping from tie to tie, with my knapsack on and stuff. But I am looking at the track. I am looking at the ties. I'm looking at the rot. I'm looking at the coloring. Today I was up here just messing around with my pan pastels, just dry brushing them, and I'm like, yeah. And then it would be a little more dark in the center where it's split open.
Right.
I'm actually going to I'm going to actually take an X-Acto and carve some of these, because I've been taking pictures with the drone of, like, just if it's an overcast day and I'm waiting for the train, just photographing the track, the condition of the track. And they're really always working on track work up there, but it's a cycle. It's like by the time you get to one end, it's time to start again, right?
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of track that looks beautifully aged and weathered. And if any of you guys are out there, follow my page. You're going to be seeing a lot of detail stuff up there, not just scenic things of trains coming down the track, but I'm going to be posting up a lot of detail stuff. So if you want to model a branch line or abandoned track or seldom used track, it'll all be there. And that if you want to model a branch line, but the track looks too perfect, it doesn't look like a branch line.
Right.
It looks too perfect,
Right.
It's got to have some wobble. It's got to have a bunch of crooked ties, missing ties, grass growing up through it. All of this is a work in progress, Kevin. But to me, it's like right now, honestly, like some people may say, wow, if you have this really cool railroad upstairs, like, why wouldn't you want to just, right now, having been on crutches for 10 months last year, to me, I bought the drone in February. This is before the pandemic thing started. I bought that drone in February down at B&H. And flying it and flying over a marsh up at Bear Mountain and flying along over the Batten Kill River, and is like, it gives me a liberating feeling where I literally can fly. Like, I am flying. I'm not on crutches anymore. I'm running, I'm climbing, I'm jumping, I'm flying. And that is very important I will tell all you guys out there, whatever you can do to feel alive in the time that we're living in right now, you do it, man. You just go flat out, because you know what? A life with no passion is no life at all anyway. So
That's right.
if you're not living full out, what's the point? I look at it this way. I never thought I would live past 35 years old. Honestly, my parents died young. I lost a sister by the time I was 26. They were all gone. I've always been a very passionate guy, and that's the reason. And even now, I don't play around. I'm out there living full out, and what you see is a result of that type of a mindset. So
that's awesome, and that's the essence of why we do this, is to convey that to folks, because it's possible for us to convey the enthusiasm, and for us to catch enthusiasm to work on our layouts, for example, or to work on our photography by seeing the work of someone else that motivates us, right? But what you're talking about is a different level for that. It's about, it's about why we're doing what we're doing. It's the juice behind, our passion for trains, right? And like we say, if it's not fun, don't do it, right?
Well, and the other thing is that I realize that everything I do out there ultimately ends up bad. It's like if you have a bad day at work, you're probably going to bring some of that back into your house.
Yeah, you track it around.
If you step in mud or step in some stuff,
exactly,
you better leave your shoes out on the curb, on the front porch, because it's probably coming back with you. And when I look at what I do here, like this whole Cherry Valley branch to me is the hit song of the album, if you will. Okay. And like if all I had, let me show you this thing, and guys that want to build your dream layout, I've told enough friends the same story. Rod, you're listening. I know you are. And Rod's over there in Australia, Rod Clifton. It's like, I don't want to hear about the dream layout you're going to build, because all you need is from here down to here. Okay.
Yeah.
And a little loop and a little yard on each end where you got a mouse hole in the wall. You need a big U shape or an L or whatever. And I can come down here and make up a train. I can switch some cars. I can do some respots. I can run out and come back in with an inbound, some inbound traffic. You don't need, a whole basement. What you need is a place to fulfill on a vision of what feels like being down by the railroad for you, right? It's not about how big it is. Really what I wanted to be able to do is, what does it feel like to be down by the freight house and the old siding or the old team track, or, down by the feed mill, listening to the auger cranking. It's, it's a mindset, and it is a sense of place. It's about creating that feeling for yourself. You can come home to. So is that good?
Exactly. We're getting a little bit of a hiccup in the signal here. So Michelle, I saw we've had several questions, and I don't see what we have on Facebook, but I'm sure we have some there, and some comments. So why don't we look into those? I think we've answered the first one here.
I'm going to go back in the other room and sit down.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, you've answered a few of them. So I do have a couple questions that people have asked, though. Gus wants to know how often trains run on the Batten Kill, because he's been there before but not seen a train.
Haha. How often? Well, I'm going to tell you real good this one, okay? I know the guys up on the Batten Kill real well. I've been photographing it for 35 years. And this is the deal. This is the story with the Batten Kill. Batten Kill will typically run once a week, sometimes twice a week, okay? But, you never know when they're going to run. And even when they're going to run, hey, what happened to my picture?
Your hand is on it.
Even when they're going to run, they don't always run. I was there last week, and I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I drove 3 hours to the Batten Kill, and they were switching up at the mill. And that train was going to leave at 3:30 in the afternoon. It never went anywhere. I'm on the call, please. So when do they run is an unanswerable question. How often do they run? Usually now it's busier season, so at least once a week. But you never know. Sometimes they'll be like they're going to run, and then we're going to do track work today. The guys called in. They said something's going on down. We're going to take care of that. We'll run tomorrow. Or Pan Am said they were going to have our cars here, and they didn't. So now, sorry, we're not going.
Very
So
typical
lucky
of lighter density short.
I have a friend up there who lets me, camp out. He's got an empty house that he takes care of, and he lets me sleep there if I need to. Sometimes I've driven all the way back, have dinner with my wife, sleep here, and get up at 5 in the morning and leave again and go again. So where's he? So the question is, where does your friend live and what's it worth, you know? It's a nice little railroad, though, really. Very charming.
How much time you have. We have a question as to how many Bob Hart locomotives do you own?
Come on, is that Bob Harp asking that?
No, it's Dean Taylor.
Well, you know what? Bob Harp, matter of fact, here you go. Here's the first Bob Harp locomotive. Can you see it?
Yep.
All right, that was the first one. I have that one. Hold on. I got one. Ooh. 2, 3. Guess what? Tell Dean he's in luck. GP30, number 4. I got a couple more chop nose RS3s. Oh. 5, 6. Hold on. I always told Bob. Bob told me Bob told me I was going to be a movie star one day, and I said, "You and me, we're going to be in the same movie." 6. Bob Harp is a master model builder. Okay, there's no question. He's built. Oh man. And here's one more. Hold on. What was that? 6. Oh, he built this. This was a Ken and Bob collaborative effort. Bob Harp built it, and I did the weathering. So
nice.
That was a KK Bob Harp special. I had to do the weathering because it's very personal to me. And I think the last one, see it back there?
Yep.
That RS3 chop nose?
Yep.
That's Bob Harp. So
Nice.
I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I would say about 8 locomotives on this railroad out of 30, 20 something.
Nice.
Okay.
Very
Next
nice.
question.
Well, people, you answered pretty much all the other questions, but there are a lot of comments about how you use different elevations, even in the foreground, and the different variegated colors that you use through the foreground, and how real that makes everything, how that detail is fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Am I going to get to see these comments and stuff on the Facebook page?
I don't know how you see the Zoom ones. I think they get.
No, I mean, I don't mean right now, but like when people post a comment, does it stay on the
It stays
no,
on
it
the
doesn't.
live stream on Facebook, but these are in Zoom. There's a whole bunch of comments in Zoom.
Wow. Okay.
I can actually send them to you because when we process, we get a notes file that has the actual chat in it. So
Yep.
I can text that or email it to you.
Well, just so I could tell Bob Harp if we got famous or not from this, how many people tuned in tonight to the broadcast?
We have 27. I think it's 26 now. 27 plus however many there are on Facebook.
Cool.
There's a couple of three similar questions here. One of which Michelle mentioned about Gerald, our creative director at the store, said, "Love the foreground scenery, bushes, grass, weeds. It really pulls all the scenery together and sets the scene. Plus, you feel like you're looking into a photograph. Awesome." And then,
Wow.
And then Chris said, "People forget the power of color and simply use some paint to give the illusion of detail."
Is that Chris Adams?
This is Chris Palomarez. He says, "People forget the power of color and simply using some paint to give the illusion of detail." And then he says that he uses the quote of James Lincoln, "Track is a model too," which it's one we like to repeat a lot because we tend to forget. We get these super detailed freight cars and locomotives and passenger cars and structures, and then we have a track that looks like it might be from a train set. It's your layout. You can do whatever you like to do, but if you want to have a complete sense of place, as you say, you have to remember the track is a model too. And I should say that there's quite a bit of track on your layout that's code 55 flex track,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is lighter track than most of us have dealt with. I have some of my, on my layout that I'm rebuilding, I have some of my layout, and I've done the same thing with the ties that you've done, but there's something about an older sighting that
Yes.
that you can only capture with code 55.
That's right.
There may be a brand new customer where you would use code 70 or even maybe code 83, as we did at Marquette Rail, because it's a brand new customer, right?
Yep.
And you have nice ballast in that sighting. Very, very unusual. Mostly it's going to be down in the mud, ties all askew, weeds everywhere, code 55.
Yep.
Right?
You know what it is, Kevin? You gotta ask yourself, like, like it's like a woman walking into a boutique and says, "I need a dress to wear tonight," and the lady who works there says, "Well, where are you going? Who's going to be there, and what do you want to look like?"
Right.
Right. Okay.
Right.
I mean, if you're going down to the diner to hopefully meet someone, you can wear just about anything, but it depends on who you want. What is the story that you'd like to tell about what's going on? But you really have to you got to be decisive about what it is that you're trying to create, because here's the thing, like they say, if you don't know where you want to go, it's probably not likely that you'll get there.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Right.
And what is it? I'm trying to think of one of the famous Bob Harp quotes, because every time I speak to him, he has a funny one. But Bob Harp always tells me he shows his wife, like the videos of the layout or whatever, and he says that he likes seeing his models on this railroad, because he goes, it's like it's like getting all dressed up and going to the farm auction, like he likes the fact that his engines are all kind of like they look the part. They look like they belong here on this railroad, and
Yeah.
I think that inspires him to do some of his really best work.
Well, it's a setting. It's a setting. It's like a stage, right?
I feel the same way about Bob's work. Is like, if I had a really nicely detailed scene and I put a shiny boxcar with shiny wheels, or, weathering all goop down the side, that didn't look like, it looked like, my granddaughter did it, that wouldn't go so well to carry the theme of something that's believable, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Kevin, this has been a great conversation, because I can tell that you pay a lot of attention to detail yourself, and it's very refreshing to talk to someone who's very versed in what they already want to know about. So,
well, thank you. It's fun, as is this show, because of guests like you. So we really thank you for sharing your story with us, because that's why we're doing this, is to connect people who are train enthusiasts, who are rail enthusiasts, and to develop the community. And we figure the way to do that is to connect people individually. So thanks for sharing your story and how it's played out, both in your photographs and in your model railroad. And let's see, Thursday I'm still going to be out here in Phoenix. So Chris and Michelle and I are going to work on who we're going to have on the show on Thursday, because I didn't expect to make this trip. But we'll be same channel, the same Zoom channel on Thursday evening, 6:30 Mountain Time, 8:30.
Oh, cool.
7:30 Central.
So I'll talk to my buddy there, Mr. C, and okay.
Talk to Mr. C if he can do short. If he can do short views, we can make that work.
Short views.
Definitely. Well, I'm just talking about, depending on when he would like to do a show. We can fix him up. But very much like to do his layout, because he has the same kind of eye that you do, and I really like the fact that on his layout he has a winter scene, which other than Lance, our friend Lance, you don't see many other, his old Monon layout. You don't see many winter scene or fall scene layouts, and so, or not fall, late fall, where the trees are bare. So
Mike's an incredible artist. He's been he's a great friend. He's been a true he's been a mentor. He's been a support. He's been a lot of things to me. I'm very grateful to have, Neil Schofield, Confalone, Mike Rose, all these guys in my orbit. And listen, when you hang around with birds that fly high, chances are you're not going to be a pigeon sitting on the windowsill, as Bob Hart would say. I'll leave you on that note, my friend.
Yeah, I was going to say, and on that note, we will see y'all Thursday night, same time, and then once again for our OS Happy Hour on Saturday at 5 Mountain Time, 7 Eastern. So
Eastern.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks again to my co-hosts, Michelle Kempema and Chris Palomarez. Thanks for all of our participants being here tonight, and we'll see you Thursday night. Take care.
Stay well, guys. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, Ken.
You're welcome. My pleasure.